Good afternoon, everyone. This is Matt Smith with Sudan Relief Fund, and I'm here to give a third quarter webinar today. And for those of you who have never joined one of these, I'll start by just briefly outlining I would say the plan for this afternoon. So we'll start with, I'll tell you about my recent travels and journey to Sudan and South Sudan. And then I will take some questions at the end. And my hope is that this time will be both informative, but also inspirational. And, there's a lot of incredible things that are happening right now, thanks to our donors and our partners in South Sudan and Sudan. And so I hope that you all leave this time feeling inspired and hopeful in the midst of such great need about that you'll leave actually feeling optimistic about what's happening in this part of the world. So I will just go ahead and dive in, and I think we'll get people trickling in here throughout the afternoon. And so as I always do with these webinars, I always like to start with a map. It helps orient me in this time and conversation, and hopefully it will help you as well. So this is a map of South Sudan, which is what you see on the screen. And in the bottom right-hand corner of this map, I have outlined the locations that I went on this trip. So you can see we covered a lot of ground. I was in country for just about 2 weeks, and over those 2 weeks, I was able to get all across South Sudan. Now, some of you may have joined a webinar earlier this year where I talked about my travels up into the Nuba Mountains of Sudan. On this trip, because of the rainy season, I wasn't actually able to get up to see Dr. Tom in Nuba because the roads were washed out. But I was able to get all over South Sudan. So the capital city of Juba, all in Western Equatoria. I was able to go up into Upper Nile State near the border of Sudan. So I'm going to take you to each of these locations so that you get a sense of exactly what is happening in Sudan Relief Fund's work on the ground here in South Sudan. So, this is how we get around. We fly all around the country on these small little planes. Usually it's 4 or 5 seats in there. And this is how we get around. So this is a common sight for me as I sit kind of looking out the window, looking over the kind of vast expanse of South Sudan as we head to our next location. And as you also probably can imagine, South Sudan remains the most dangerous country in the world for humanitarian workers. So as we travel all across this country, oftentimes it's necessary and wise to have armed security. So this was a photo, you can see me there in the background with my colleague David. And we had some armed protection as we moved through this part of South Sudan. But that's sometimes it's very wise and necessary just because of the concerns for safety that are present throughout South Sudan. And, so many people who have served in this country, humanitarian workers have passed away because of the tribal conflict. So it's always a reminder when we're in country of, we're serving in an area that is dangerous. But of course, that also means that it's an area that has great need. So our first stop was to Juba, South Sudan, the capital, and I was able actually to meet with a new partner of ours. This is the bishop of the Diocese of Torit, and you can see myself there, you can see the bishop, and you can see my colleague David. So on a map of South Sudan, these are areas that are in the eastern part of South Sudan as you move closer towards Ethiopia. Now, Sudan Relief Fund has been involved previously in this part of the country, but we are exploring some new partnership opportunities, including additional water wells in this part of South Sudan. You can see Eastern Equatoria here. Actually, Torit is kind of in the bottom right. You can see it starred there. And so, yeah, we had a great meeting with the bishop there of Torit and are continuing this conversation about potential new wells, as well as we met with the bishop of Ye. So in addition to all the work that SRF has going on that many of you know, we're also continuing to explore ways that we can expand into other parts of the country and into other areas where we're not currently active. So that was a great meeting to set the tone for this trip. Our next stop was to Rumbek, South Sudan, where I had the wonderful opportunity to meet with the Mother Teresa Missionaries of Charity. So many of you might know and recognize these sisters who come from, the order of Mother that Mother Teresa founded. They run an orphanage in Rumbek, South Sudan, which is the only orphanage in this part of the country that accepts infants. So often the sisters will accept these infants when they're just even sometimes a few days old, and they will stay with the sisters until they're able to walk, and then they'll try to put them back into either an extended family's home or some relative, but of course some stay. And you can see here one of the little babies that I had the pleasure to meet and interact with, and she's just so cute, so precious. You can see actually the sisters here. In addition to providing funds for the orphanage itself, we also provide the medicines that the sisters will use and administer for so many of these young ones. So we actually traveled with a shipment of medicines with us. We packed it in a plane. We flew, loaded it here into the truck, and then we actually were able to be there for the delivery. And that was a real special moment for me and for our team to actually be present as we were able to hand over boxes of medicines that are going to last them for probably until the beginning of next year. And walking around the facility, this is actually inside one of the newly renovated buildings that Sudan Relief Fund, along with our donors' support and partnership, has been able to construct. So the first time I came to this facility 4 years ago, I remember coming into this particular room where, in this image that you're seeing, and I saw the children on the beds and it was so crowded in there. And I remember, my colleague David Dettoni and myself thinking, hey, we would love to see this particular room renovated and improved. And now you fast forward a few years later, we've been able to completely renovate it and construct a new roof. So, a roof that previously had holes in it and is now a great looking roof, and the children have a safe place to stay. This little baby, that was a particularly touching story. This child was no more than a few days old, and when I showed up at the facility, the sisters there told me that they had rescued this baby who had been abandoned, actually. And it was a very sad story. The mother had actually tried to get rid of the baby. And a family member found the child and brought the child to the orphanage. And the sisters are now taking care of it. And the baby, like I said, is just a few days old. And the name is Bakita. And so it's a beautiful name for a beautiful child. And it was stories like these that give me such inspiration and hope that in the midst of such tragedy and need, especially for these innocent children, that you've got the loving care of the sisters who are there, and that we can be there to support them in their work. Just down the street in Rumbek is a girls' school. It's called the Loretto Girls' School, and this school is fantastic. It is home to hundreds and hundreds of motivated young girls who are eager to get an education and make a difference in South Sudan. This is Sister Orla. She is an Irish nun who runs this particular school, and she's got it running like incredibly. And so many of the young girls that I had the opportunity to interact with while walking around the school there were incredibly impressive. And again, this is in Rumbek, South Sudan, which is an extremely hard-hit area, an extremely hard-hit country. And yet there are girls there who are getting a good education thanks to the care of Sister Orla and the teachers there. And they even run a little healthcare community program for people in the community. And this girl that you can see here in the blue shirt, she's actually a graduate of the school who has come back to Rumbek after some nursing training to help administer care for some of the young ones and community members. So this is something that I love to see and that we love to see at Sudan Relief Fund is people who have benefited from these incredible projects like, schools and, healthcare facilities come back and actually serve themselves. And I saw that quite a bit at this particular school, at the Loretto Girls School. And of course, too, you hear stories of young girl. Sister Orla told me a story about a young girl who was 16 years old, and her family was attempting to sell her off for the dowry. And she escaped when she kind of caught wind of this plan. She escaped and actually came to the Loretto Girls School, and they welcomed her in, where she's now boarding there. She's actually in primary school because she's hasn't really been able to go to any school, even up until the age of 16. So she's in primary school, but she's there getting an education and again within the kind of the safe confines and care that this school is providing. So Sudan Relief Fund is providing scholarship to many of the young girls here at the school. And this was a really cool moment, actually. We got to actually interact and meet with two young girls who had come from the Nuba Mountains. So if you're at all familiar with Sudan and South Sudan geography, or even our work at Sudan Relief Fund, you would know that the Nuba Mountains are a very far way away. They're in Sudan, so they are a country away, quite literally, from South Sudan. It's where Dr. Tom Katina and the Mother of Mercy Hospital is. And these young girls came all the way from Nuba to this school in Rumbek, South Sudan, because they knew that they could get a good education there. They had gotten a reference from a priest, and they were able to actually make their way all the way down to Rumbek, where they are now here at school. They can't currently go home to Nuba because of the ongoing fighting and civil conflict that's happening in Sudan, but they're very happy and pleased with the education and care they're getting here at the Loretto Girls School in Rumbek. So it was a quick visit there to see the orphanage and to see the girls' school, but overall extremely positive. And the next location is, you can see in the western corner here of South Sudan, and highlighted in red is Western Equatoria. And that's where I'm going to take you all next. And we're going to start from the dot that you can hopefully see on your screen called Tambra, which is a black dot there, kind of near Central African Republic, Tambra. And I'm going to take you to some locations from there all the way down to the location that is starred called Yambio. So in Tambra, there has been a lot of tribal conflict over the last 3 to 4 years, and it's resulted in massive amounts of displacement. So populations of people that otherwise would, have their home there and their family in Tambra have had to flee because of this constant cycle of fighting and displacement. So nearby in the parish of Ave Maria, there is an actual IDP camp. So IDP is for people who aren't necessarily refugees. They're not in a new country as a refugee. They're internally displaced within their own country. So that's what IDP camp means. But functionally speaking, it's a refugee camp. It's people who have been displaced from their home, who need all the basics: food, water, medicine. And in a small parish in western South Sudan, there's a camp of about 7,500 IDPs. And that is where two parish priests, Father Avelino and Father Albert. If you've been a donor to Sudan Relief Fund for a little while, those names might ring a bell to you. They are European priests who have been in this particular part of South Sudan for many years and have built this parish up. And it's such a beautiful story because it's a small parish. So you might ask, why are 7,500 plus people coming to the parish where, it's in this tiny little corner of South Sudan? Why aren't they trying to get to Juba, the capital, or somewhere else? And it's because these priests, and through the support of our donors, have built up such an incredible and robust support network of clinics, of food, of education in this particular parish. And they have an incredibly beautiful church there too, that so many of the IDPs have come to this parish because they know that if they can be in the presence of this beautiful church and around the parish priests, Avelino and Albert, that they'll get the care that they need. So it's a wonderful testimony to our donors' continued partnership and support that have helped build up this particular parish in Western South Sudan, that now it can even care for these 7,500 IDPs who are showing up at their doorstep. But of course, that means that there's lots of work. Avelino and Albert have lots to do, and they're constantly being pulled. And so actually, we've got these incredibly devout and wonderful members of the Religious Institute of the Perpetual Adoration of Guadalupe. So you can see this is Sister Marguerite, And I had the opportunity to meet with her when we were there. In fact, she told me that she's watched one of our webinars in the past, which was such a delight to hear. And so she is out there now with an order of Mexican nuns. So Sister Margarita and the Sisters of the Perpetual Adoration of Guadalupe are in this western corner of South Sudan, assisting with Avelino and Albert, helping care for the needs of people in this part of South Sudan. Sudan Relief Fund is helping construct their convent here in South Sudan. So this is myself, and there's David in the middle, my colleague and our executive vice president, and then there's the sister right there. So, sister, if you're seeing this again, we want to say a special hello to you all the way from the U.S. But they've got a lot of work ahead of them, and they are incredibly devout, incredibly wonderful people, and they're going to be a big help to this parish that needs it. They'll be working in the schools in this part of South Sudan. Additionally, we have the St. Peter's Health Clinic. So you can imagine with thousands of IDPs, a host population, that there are lots of medical needs. And of course, we've got a clinic here that Sudan Relief Fund is supporting. We provide the medicines here at this clinic, and I had the opportunity to walk around and see some of the medicines, both there on the shelf, but then also in action, and actually got to interact with the lead clinician there, whose name is George. And he just told me, for so many people, the government facilities in this part of South Sudan are just not an option. They're not a place where you can go to if you really need care. They're either out of medicines, or they're closed, or they don't have doctors. So even just a small clinic like this, the St. Peter's Health Clinic, is able to do a lot of good, because what George told me was that if someone has a need in the community, and even if it's at 2, 3 in the morning, we'll come and help take care of them. And if they've got a dentist there now, they have a good support staff to help care for people. And this is actually in front of the clinic. You can see I don't think I've showed a photo of him yet, but this is actually Father Avelino here on the right. And he was there telling me about all the needs that they see at the clinic. It's a lot of, things like malaria and sepsis. And so often in South Sudan, you travel to the healthcare facilities in these remote areas. They're not there. Of course, there are some complicated cases, but the majority of people have simple cases that are easy to treat. Things like malaria, as I said, and sepsis. So, as long as they can get the right care, lives can be saved. The issue is just access to that care and proximity to that care. So this clinic is helping care for thousands of people, and it's saving every day. It's saving so many lives, and it's your partnership and your support of this clinic that is directly saving those lives. And of course, as I walk throughout the clinic, I got to interact with and see, different patients. And again, so many of the children there are suffering with simple and easy to treat things. But if this clinic wasn't there, their story would be a lot different. And that's actually George, who helps lead the clinic. You can see him there in the black hat. And he's just an incredibly hardworking man, like all of the partners that we work with in South Sudan are very hardworking. And just across the way from this clinic, and I'm hoping that in sharing all of this, you're getting a well-rounded picture of this particular parish and why someone who is displaced would come here. You've got a clinic, you've got education that's being now helped facilitated by the new Mexican sisters who are there. You've got this, which is a vocational training program as well. It's called the St. Joseph the Workers Vocational Training Workshop, I believe is the proper name. And it's extremely robust in the programs that it offers. It offers carpentry, plumbing, it offers mechanicry, so like you working on bikes and vehicles and things like that. And so, someone who is displaced, or even someone here in the host population in this part of South Sudan, can learn a trade and can actually learn what it is to, work with their hands and maybe even create a business. So this actually is a very interesting story. This man here in this photo, I had the opportunity to meet with him, and he is blind, but you can see there he's working on a wheel. So even people that have needs or handicaps possibly are able to still learn trades and apply themselves so that, they can feel like they can earn a living here in this part of South Sudan. Of course, additionally, in seeing all these projects, we've got water wells spread out all across South Sudan. So this year, I believe Sudan Relief Fund is going to set a record with the amount of water wells that we will drill, which is just so exciting. And so many of our donors have really supported this endeavor to bring clean water to South Sudan. And I believe this year will hit probably over 70 water wells, a combination of hand pump wells and submersible solar powered water wells. You can see in this photo, this is a hand pump. But you think about 70 plus water wells annually this year, times thousands of people per well. I mean, that is hundreds of thousands of people potentially that are being impacted by these wells, in addition to, of course, all the wells that have been drilled over the years. So that hundreds of thousands number, that's all the people from all the wells that Sudan Relief Fund has been involved in over the years. Plus, you add on another 70, and each well serves sometimes two, three, four, 5,000 people. It is an incredible testament to your continued support and partnership and saving so many lives. There's Father Albert there on the left. You can see another well that we've dug. So these were both hand pumps. And the solar powered submersible are a little bit more they take a little bit more work and they're a little bit more expensive. And they kind of depends on the needs of the community, which one we put in. The solar powered ones are a little more expensive. They're about between 25 to 30,000 US dollars. And these hand pumps that you see in these photos range between ten to $15,000, again, depending on location and kind of how remote it is. As you can imagine, we're talking here in these photos, these are very remote places. So it's very challenging and for these drilling companies to get out to these locations. So, there's many organizations that just aren't really willing to drill in this part of South Sudan because of the logistical challenges. So, thankfully, we've got a great drilling company that we partner with, and they've done some great work. And so I saw some new wells, and then I was also able to see some existing wells that have been built in the last 12 months as well. So that was all just in this kind of Tumbra area, Ave Maria, Source Yubu area of South Sudan. Now I'm actually going to take you to Nzara. So Nzara took us about took us about 8 hours to drive to. And that drive was pretty rough. I have to be honest with y'all. It was a lot of getting thrown around. But we made it to Nzara, and I was able to see some of the most inspirational projects that I've had the privilege to be a part of since I've started here with Sudan Relief Fund, and that is in particular at St. Teresa Nzara Hospital. So this hospital, even just 4 years ago when I visited for the first time, was operational, but it was in need of some repairs. It was in need of some of a facelift. It had all the things you would need at a hospital, but I knew, and I think our team had a vision. David Dettoni had a vision. Some of our donors came alongside us to partner in this vision. And now what we have here at this hospital is something that's really special. So some of you may know that we recently constructed a new pediatric ward at Nzara Hospital, brand new, funded by a donor this was in the last 12 months. We're currently putting the finishing touches on a new adult ward as well. And that'll be done hopefully before the end of this year, if not in Q1 27. And we have a new isolation ward that we also recently constructed. And we also have this, which you're seeing in this photo, is a new NICU, so a neonatal intensive care unit. So South Sudan has one of the highest child mortality rates. It has one of the highest maternal mortality rates. So care for mothers and their newborn children, especially premature children, is really hard to come by in this part of the world. So, a place like Nzara Hospital now has the capacity and ability to properly care for these new premature babies who are, born at 28, 29, 30 weeks. I had the opportunity to meet a few of them. And this facility, I mean, this looks like something that you would see here in the United States, honestly. You can see the incubators and some of the NICU equipment. And we got some great video here that we hope to share with our donors over the coming weeks. But I hope that this photo helps really illustrate how incredible this facility is. I mean, we had the chance to walk through it and our jaws were on the floor. I mean, you don't see anything like this in South Sudan. So the Inzara Hospital is really just it is a shining project here in South Sudan, and we're so privileged that to have our donors kind of coming alongside us to help make this facility so improved over the last few years. This is one of the children, the premature babies that I got the chance to meet. This little baby's name is Surprise, aptly named. And the mother there, she was just so grateful and happy for the care that this child is getting at the hospital. And it's made possible solely because of our generous donors continuing to partner with us and see the vision for what we're doing here in South Sudan, and then actually making it happen. Just down the road from the hospital is St. Paquito Orphanage. And this orphanage, again, if you've been a partner of ours for a long time, this name probably rings a bell. You might even know it. You may have even donated to it. And this orphanage has moved a few times over the years, but we have found a permanent home here in Nzara, South Sudan. And this facility is one of the best in all of the country, as far as I can tell. This facility is home to almost 200 women, 200 children. So it's, about split between boys and girls. And there's a number of dedicated women who are serving here, a group of nuns it's a local order, I believe, called the Blue Sisters. And then there's also some additional members from the community who are helping as well. And walking around and seeing the smiles on the faces of the children here at this orphanage, I mean, it just makes your heart soar because you see what is possible in this country. Because for so many of an older generation in South Sudan, their time growing up, all they knew was conflict and fighting and taking what they needed by force. But now you see a safe place like this orphanage where children feel like they can really be kids, where they can really go to school, come back, play, make friends, know that they're going to have a roof over their head, that they're going to get clean water and food. This is where, over time, I believe you'll start to see the transformation of this country is in the care that right now we're making and investments that we're making into the youth. So, of course, though, for so many of these children, they have already, even in their young age, a hard story. Many have lost their mothers in childbirth. That I would say is the most common, reason why they are now orphaned. And yet, I got here, you can see this photo. I'm standing there in the white and kind of talking to them. You can see them all sitting out, greeting us. They are so bright and they have such a great future ahead of them. And it's all because of the great care that they're getting here at this facility, which again is facilitated by Sister Bianca, who has helped found the orphanage, the Blue Sisters, community members who are volunteering here as well. So we are so privileged to be a part of this great project here at the orphanage. Similarly, this is actually at the Our Lady of Assumption School. So this is in Rumenze. So just down the road from Nzara is Rumenze. That's probably about an hour and a half drive. And again, one of the best schools in all of South Sudan that we get the privilege to be a part of. So this is run by a group of Ugandan missionaries, and they run an incredible facility with, I mean, you could see some of my notes here that, it's more than 1,000 students. I wanted to make sure I got these numbers right because it's really incredible. More than 1,000 students across primary and secondary schools. The secondary school has grown now recently. So previously, the secondary school they were just under a mango tree. But now this is actually the classroom here in this photo of the new secondary school that we're building. There's a boys' dorm, a girls' dorm. It's a new computer lab that's been finished. And again, just to kind of put a point on this, like I said about the orphanage, like I said about Nzara Hospital, in this corner of South Sudan, thanks to the incredible dedication and hard work of the partners that we get to work with, we get to come alongside them as, our donors and as Sudan Relief Fund to support them and their vision, and they are executing at the highest level. This school is full of high achieving young boys and girls who are going to be the future leaders of South Sudan. Like I said about the orphanage, and actually there's about 10 that actually that have come from that orphanage in Nzara that I just showed you, St. Bakita, and are actually boarding here at this school, some of the high achievers. And they're here at Our Lady of Assumption Primary and Secondary School. So they're doing incredible work. And even beyond education, the brothers there are actually executing food distributions as well. So there's a nearby refugee camp called the Makpundo Refugee Camp that hosts refugees from Sudan and from other parts of East and Central Africa. And we visited that last year. We visited that camp and saw that there was a need for food at that particular camp. And so we talked with the brothers who are running a school, and we said, "Hey, could you also assist us with the food distribution at this camp?" And they said, "Absolutely." So they're actually staging the food there at the school, and then they take it to the camp and distribute it. So this gives you a sense of how hardworking these Ugandan missionaries are who are running this school, and we're so privileged to partner with them. Sudan Relief Fund's been a longtime partner with this school, and it's so great to get to go back year over year and see the improvements that are being made. Walking distance from this school is a new health center. So, this is part of a vision of Nzara Hospital to expand its reach. So we've made a lot of improvements to the hospital itself, that pediatric ward I mentioned, the new adult ward, the NICU that you saw photos of. But that is just one facility, and it's an area that has there's tens and tens of hundreds of thousands of people in this catchment area of Nzara and Remenze and Tumbra and not Tumbra, but Yambio, Nzara, and Remenze. So one of the ideas was, well, let's build clinics, smaller clinics, but highly functional, closer to certain population centers, so that people don't necessarily have to come all the way to Nzara Hospital. If there's a serious case, serious surgery, of course, that might be necessary. But for simple things, what if we could build something closer to these population centers? Not necessarily full-blown hospitals yet, but clinics here, health centers to start. So that's what this is. So you can see me, I'm there on the right, my colleague David on the left, and this is the first in that vision. So as we are expanding the reach of this hospital, this is that first clinic. It's in Remenze. It's walking distance from that school that we just got to see. And there's also some IDPs in the area that this will serve, as well as the host community. Even people from that Makpundo refugee camp could walk here as well. So this clinic is going to be a lifesaver for so many, and it's, I think, going to be operational in some capacity this month here in August. And then I think there's going to be a proper grand opening of this facility later in the year. But it's a very exciting time in this part of South Sudan. In Yambio, this is the Star Support Group. So you can see that is James, and he runs the Star Support Group, which is, I think, a very interesting project that I would love to just, share a bit about here, because I don't think it's something that we've talked a lot about in a lot of our communications with donors. Maybe some of you are familiar with it, but this is a wonderful program that James is a missionary, and he's here, and his mission is to help support people who are in the community who are HIV positive. So they actually give prophylactics to thousands of people that are HIV positive. So people will actually come to this Star Support Group, which is in Yambio, and they will get prophylactics. And then additionally, they will provide ARVs to people who need them, so actual antiretrovirals. So the prophylactics are for the community, and to stop, and then the actual ARVs are for people who are positive, and they actually give those out as well. So it's a wonderful, wonderful group. It was interesting. James was telling me that for many of the men, that, they don't necessarily want to go to the hospitals because there's a stigma associated with going to the hospitals and maybe thinking that, that there's something wrong with them or what have you. So, what this group is doing is they actually provide a space where a man who, might need antiretrovirals, these ARVs, can come without necessarily having to go to the hospital. So, that will help stop the spread, and that will also give them the ability to actually get the care that they need, without that maybe the shame or community stigma that might come with going to the hospitals. So, this is a wonderful group that's helping care for people. HIV is a huge problem in this part of South Sudan. So the prophylactics for people to help kind of head off those transmissions, and then the ARVs for the people who are HIV positive. It's a wonderful group. And they're also actually additionally doing vocational training for adults as well. So people that, I think the main thing that they're doing right now is microfinancing and loans for people, and for women. Actually, they're also doing dressmaking and tailoring as well. Back in Juba, this is the Sacred Heart School in Juba. So back in the capital city, I had the chance to go to this school. This is run by a group of nuns as well. They're called the Sacred Heart Sisters, and they run a nursery and a primary school. And Sudan Relief Fund recently helped construct two new classroom blocks, as well as a water well. So this is a submersible well. So you can see kind of the tower in the background there. Water sits above. And then students can just come, turn the water on, get any water they need. So this school has grown drastically. So I think the first time I went there, they had about 500 students, but recently, this school now has, I think it's close to 1,000 students. And I think what's one interesting anecdote that Sister Adrian, who helps run the school, shared with me was, she said that there's almost every tribe in South Sudan is represented at this school in Juba. And that really struck me, because I think for a country that has struggled for so many years with tribal violence and conflict between various tribes, seeing that and seeing, okay, these young people are in a place where they're learning, and they're surrounded by people who traditionally, their grandparents or parents may have fought against, but they're here in school together, learning together. And I think that's a beautiful testament to what's possible and what I hope to be the future for South Sudan. And I'm showing you the map here so that I can take you visually here, because we've been operating here through most of this discussion in Western South Sudan. So most of what I've shown you is in Western Equatoria, Tombra, Yambio, Nzara, Remenze. That's all kind of in the western part here of South Sudan. I just showed you that school in Juba, of course, but I brought the map up so that I could take you to the northern part of the country, where I now want to show you this location in Bentiu, South Sudan. So it's Bentiu. So if you see Unity State kind of near the top of South Sudan, it's colored in pink on this map. You can see Bentiu, which is starred in Unity State. Now, Bentiu is, to be quite frank, a pretty challenging and bleak place, because it's been dealing with incredible amounts of flooding over the last 5, 6 years. I mean, you fly in and it quite literally looks like you're flying over an ocean with just a speck of land, an island in the middle. And that's Bentiu. And it's a very hard place to live. There's a big refugee and IDP camp there in Bentiu. And the diocese there has a lot of work that they're trying to do in the midst of this challenging humanitarian environment. And one of the most interesting things that Sudan Relief Fund has been able to be a part of here in Bentiu recently is this thing called the Compassionate Care Group. So in this photo, you can see on the right an Italian woman. Her name is Francesca, and she's a nurse. And this is a diocesan-run program where Francesca is actually going out into the community and going into the IDP camps and into the refugee camps, and actually trying to find people who have either been abandoned or who are maybe unable to get to healthcare facilities or hospitals, and then sitting with them and finding out what their needs are and then helping address those needs. So like this young girl had she had some sort of a mental illness and also couldn't walk. And so Francesca took me and my colleagues to help to go and see her. And what the story was is that basically, this girl has been kind of abandoned. I mean, she couldn't get to the hospital because she can't walk. She doesn't have a wheelchair or anyone to really help her. So it literally took this woman, Francesca, and some of the colleagues that are working with her, physically walking through these places and, poking their heads into to different people's tukels, the huts, and saying, okay, is anybody in here? Is anybody in here that's in need? And the program had really only been running for a couple of weeks when I was up there visiting, and they had already had, about 25 cases or so. And, she actually called us before we flew up there and said, "Hey, can you actually bring me a wheelchair for this young girl?" So we were actually able to bring a wheelchair with us on the plane so that we could deliver it. So, and it's not all, it's going to sometimes vary. Sometimes it might be, children with severe malnourishment whose parents can't take them to the nearby healthcare facilities. So Francesca's literally a roving mobile clinic of some kind. And she's a powerhouse, and we're so privileged to get to help support her work. Um, and she took us all through the camps and walking in and seeing the different cases that they're seeing. Of course, they break your heart, but it makes me so grateful that someone like her is here that's actually helping find those people who have been abandoned. This is one of already the hardest, most challenging humanitarian context to work in, and she's trying to find the hardest cases, right? And that says so much about her, and it's often the mentality of many of the partners that we work with. This is actually, you can see this is a water tower that we built. This is there near where the bishop, you can see Bishop Christian there is in the red shirt, kind of dead center, and myself there on the right. And you can see some of the people there, David, my colleague Fred, and others. And this was a new water tower we built in Bentiu. But walking around the camps, you can see like there's water everywhere. I mean, you can see people are swimming in it. There's these dikes that have been dug out, um, that kind of people walk along, and there is just so much water everywhere that the conditions there in Bentiu are very bad. I mean, open sewage. I mean, you can imagine with this amount of water and the constant flooding that they experience, that the conditions are really challenging. And so, this is where Francesca took us. We quite literally are walking through the camp. We're poking our heads into these different tents and different huts, trying to find and identify people where, this compassionate care group could help provide them some level of care. And the last stop that I want to take you all before I just answer a few of the great questions that were sent in is in Doro, South Sudan. So Doro it's actually not even on this map here, but if you go to the top right corner, northeast corner of South Sudan in Upper Nile State, there's a dot kind of near the border of Sudan and Ethiopia and South Sudan called Bunj, B-U-N-J. And Doro is kind of right near there. For all intents and purposes, we can kind of as collectively here as a group just kind of look and identify it as that area in South Sudan. So they're in Upper Nile. So we'll say, that's basically where we were here in Doro, and there is a small clinic that is really punching above its weight in terms of the amount of people that it's serving. And I've probably said a version of that for even some of the other clinics we've talked about, whether it's the compassionate care group that Francesca's running, whether it's St. Peter's Health Clinic out in Ave Maria Parish that we talked about, earlier, and Zara Hospital. I mean, these healthcare facilities are inundated with people, overwhelmed with people, and providing the care that really no other facility is able to. And so that's where I had the opportunity to go and actually visit this clinic in Doro, where Sudan Relief Fund is help funding medicines. We helped expand their pharmacy. We have also helped build a BMONC, which I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but it is essentially for maternal care. And we're also doing a nutrition program. So, many of our donors might know this already, but we've been providing in great supply a product called Plumpy Nut, which is a ready-to-use therapeutic food that we're providing here in Doro, South Sudan, as well as in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan, areas that are experiencing extreme malnourishment and extreme famine, even in some cases. And so here in Doro, this is what you see when you walk in, is lines of, dozens and dozens and dozens of mothers with their small children who show up at 2, 3, 4 a.m. at the gate of this clinic waiting to be seen. We showed up on a Monday morning and the place was packed. These mothers are just looking for this plumpy nut, which is like a peanut paste. I'll show you there. I have a photo of some of the packets here in just a moment. Um, and it's given to the child, and depending on the level of their malnourishment, they'll get a certain amount. This clinic doesn't even take cases that are moderately malnourished. They only see children who are severely malnourished, the worst of the worst. So we had the chance to actually see and be there on a Monday when they were doing one of the distributions. And so what they do is, they measure the upper arm circumference. And if a child falls in the red, that would classify them as severely malnourished. So, if they're in the yellow, that means they're moderately malnourished. So all the children here at this particular clinic are severely malnourished. And this is the ready-to-use therapeutic food. The Plumpy Nut, you can kind of see in its packets, it kind of just is basically the size of like a protein bar, that you might see in one of our grocery stores here in the US. And a child can just rip it open and suck it down. So this child had been in the program. He came in severely malnourished. I think it was maybe 2 weeks before we were there, and he's now doing much better. And so you can see he's doing pretty well, and he's got his Plumpy Nut there in hand. It's very simple for the children to eat them on their own without, they don't need water. They don't need to, take it with anything. It's very simple. So this is something that Sudan Relief Fund has, we respond to the needs as they pop up. And over the last couple of years, famine and malnourishment has been a huge problem in Sudan and South Sudan. And so, thanks to our donors, we have been able to step into that environment and help meet these needs and save a lot of children's lives. So, things like clean water, medicine, Plumpy Nut, food like this are directly impacting so many people. And actually, this is one of the latest shipments. I was so happy to see it that I wanted to snap a photo. Not the most exciting photo, but hopefully it was exciting to me because walking into the clinic there and seeing boxes and boxes and boxes of Plumpy Nut, I thought, all right, there's going to be a lot of supply here for the children that are in need over the next, however many months. In this part of Doro, the World Food Program actually pulled out completely. So there's about 90,000 refugees in this part of South Sudan. And the World Food Program is not there anymore doing any so there is no real NGO presence that is providing any sort of famine relief for the people here, for the host communities or for the refugees who have come in from Sudan. So this clinic, the Plumpy Nut that SRF was able to step in and help provide, is a lifeline for all of these mothers and children. And, I wish that I could bring all of you with me to see it for yourself. But I hope that these photos and my stories help give some insight into just the incredible impact and the volume of people that you're impacting. Again, across water, food, and medicine, not to mention the schools, vocational training, and the rest of it. I mean, just in the humanitarian side of things specifically, it's an incredible, incredible impact. So, as I mentioned at the top, on this particular trip, I didn't get the opportunity to go into Sudan. I did that earlier this year, but I wasn't able to on this particular trip, simply because of the rainy season. So we were really in the middle of rainy season when I was up there, and the road, and I use that word pretty liberally there. The road was not passable to actually get up to see Dr. Tom and to get up to see Mother of Mercy Hospital. So I wasn't able to get up there. The updates that we have received from him and the staff there is that times are really tough, really challenging at the hospital right now. Some of you probably know that the civil war in Sudan continues to rage on, and Nuba and South Kordofan State, where the Nuba Mountains are, continue to kind of be right in the middle of a lot of this fighting. So I know, just continue to keep Dr. Tom and the staff there and the people of Nuba in your prayers. Sudan Relief Fund, thankfully, has our operations and getting medicine and plumping that up to the hospital have not been impacted. So we continue to have an access. We continue to have access to be able to kind of transport these humanitarian goods. But just, continue to keep those people in your thoughts and in your prayers as well, because I think it's a very challenging time for Tom and the rest of the staff there at the hospital. So I got a couple of great questions. As I always say, if I don't answer your question here directly, it's not because it wasn't a good one. It's just because I'm trying to be respectful of y'all's time today. So I'm just going to take 5 questions that I received, and I'll try to answer them as succinctly as I can. And I'm going to put my information up here so that at the end of our time, hopefully you'll have plenty of opportunity. If you want to write my name and email and phone, you can reach out to me directly. And if I don't get to your question, feel free to contact me for further discussion. So I'll start with this question, which I don't think I've answered on one of these webinars, at least recently. So someone asked, does Sudan Relief Fund receive funding from UNICEF, the UN, or the US government? So I have a very direct answer, which is no. All of our programs and projects are all privately funded by individual donors and private foundations here, both in the United States, but also globally. We do have donors spread out across the world as well. But it all comes from the generosity of private individuals. So we don't get grant money from the U.S. government, and we don't work with we don't have formal partnerships, I would say, with like UNICEF or the UN. Of course, if they're involved in a program, we're generally aware of each other's presence and the work that they're doing, so we're not, duplicating efforts. But all of our funding comes directly from private individuals and private foundations here. Which, again, I think that's actually an incredible testament. If you look at all the work that's being done through you all's donations and partnership, it makes it that much more special that this is all coming from individuals who have a heart to help people in need in South Sudan and Sudan. What can you tell us about the Ebola situation? Is that impacting South Sudan? Oh, that's a good question. You've probably seen Ebola in the news, although it's kind of faded recently. So Ebola is currently raging in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a neighboring country. And I was a stone's throw away from the DROC. There was some minor, small health checkpoints, nothing too serious, but some minor health checkpoints kind of near the border of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Right now, thank God, South Sudan has not seen an active case of Ebola that we know of. I don't think that as a country that they're properly ready to deal with it. I think it would be a tragedy if Ebola were to come into South Sudan. But thankfully, in Zara Hospital, which kind of sits near the border of the DROC, has extremely capable and qualified staff. As I mentioned, we recently helped construct an isolation ward there. So I have confidence that if Ebola does come into South Sudan, at least in the areas where, we're working, that we'll have a quick response, but let's hope and pray that it doesn't get to that point. So currently, I think even in Uganda, they haven't seen an active case in a while, as far as I know. South Sudan, no active cases. The DROC continues to struggle with it. So we hope and pray that soon will come to an end in the DROC, because they're suffering certainly with Ebola there, but not yet in South Sudan. Let me see here. So where do you see improvements in South Sudan? I always hear so much about how poor it is, but I would love to hear where you're seeing tangible improvements. So I think I'll just quickly highlight again a place that I mentioned extensively here on this webinar, which is in Zara Hospital. I think I spoke pretty glowingly about it when I was going through some of the photos, and I'll reiterate it here that there is really no facility like it that I have seen in South Sudan in terms of just both the facilities, the staff, and then also what it can treat. So it's a remarkable, remarkable facility. Um, let's see. What are the most critical needs, and where can donors give to when they want their gift to go towards the greatest need? That's a great question. I think so. The most critical needs are probably what many of you might expect, but I'll reiterate it here. It's food, it's water, and it's medicine. Those are the three primary needs. Of course, Sudan Relief Fund makes strategic investments in civil society, things like vocational training, seminaries, um, churches, Catholic University in South Sudan, schools like we saw the girls' school in Rumbek and the primary schools in Juba and in Remenze. But generally, the greatest needs still are keeping people alive, food, water, and medicine. And I would say that, if you want your gift to go towards the greatest need, you can always reach out to me and allocate it as such. Hey, I want this, however Sudan Relief Fund sees it, to go towards the greatest need that you're currently seeing on the ground. We keep a close ear to the ground. I'm obviously physically there in country, usually maybe a couple times a year. My colleague David is there even more often than I. We have my colleague Fred, who's there as well in Juba. So we have a pretty keen sense of what the greatest needs are in any given moment. So you can always, of course, you can always mention that that's where you would like to allocate your gift towards, and we'd be happy to accommodate that. And of course, even just a general donation to Sudan Relief Fund, we would apply it towards the greatest need there as well. But yeah, food, water, and medicine remain the primary ones. And I think this is the last question here that I'll have for today because we're almost at time. Um, but what's one moment from the trip that you haven't been able to stop thinking about? That's a tough question for me to answer, but I think that the one moment that I've really just kept thinking about, and when I close my eyes, it's the one that stays with me the most, is the story of that young couple-day-old baby in Rumbek named Bakita. Having the chance to meet that little child and see, think about what her life would have been without the loving care of the Mother Teresa Missionaries of Charity, is Bakita probably wouldn't be with us. She would probably not have made it because she had been abandoned. But thankfully, a family member had found Bakita and quickly brought her to the orphanage where she is now getting great care. She has a roof over her head, loving care from the sisters, medicines and food, water. And that is something that has stayed with me since this trip, and was very impactful. I would say that's the primary one. And the second is in Doro. So that location there that we just concluded on in Northeast South Sudan, where we did the plumpy nut distribution, actually being able to be there on a day where they were actually doing the distributions and actually seeing firsthand and meeting the mothers and their children who were severely malnourished. That was very impactful. It was emotionally affecting me, and I know and my colleagues as well, to actually get to be there in person and see it. Because for me too, it's a full circle moment of getting to connect the dots with conversations that I have with donors here in the US. I talk to donors here, whether it's through the webinars or individually, and we get generous donations to help support these programs and projects. And then I get to actually then see it in action and actually see the direct recipients of it. That's a privilege for me. So that certainly has stuck with me, but it gives me hope too that together, your partnership, Sudan Relief Fund, our donors our program partners on the ground, we can accomplish a lot and we can save a lot of lives. So a special thank you to you all for joining today. I'll conclude by just saying again, thank you. We're so grateful for your interest and having a heart for South Sudan. It means the world that you join and take time out of y'all's busy day to hear what's going on in Sudan and South Sudan. And again, please reach out to me directly should you have any further questions. But together, as I like to say, together we're going to continue to save more lives together in the future. So God bless. Take care.